welcome back to Casablanca. In this episode, I'm covering Chicken Run, which is a 2000 stop-motion film directed by Peter Lord and Nick Park, written by Karey Kirkpatrick, and starring Julia Sawalha, Mel Gibson, and Miranda Richardson. This is the movie I was talking about last week. I have had this movie planned since last year, and which should make it my most planned movie episode that I've done, but it isn't really actually. It's just technically it's just any other regular episode. The difference is that I knew a year ago I was going to do it this year. I was going to do it a year later because my sister asked me to do Chicken Run for Thanksgiving, but I was like, oh, I already recorded it, and then I was like, I'll do it next year, and she was like, okay, and so I went ahead and made the title cards to remind me. Every time I would see it, I'm like, wait, why did I? Oh yeah. So when you see the title card, it's not one I just slapped together before posting. It's one I slapped together a year ago. So it's a good thing I'm still using that same format a year later. Otherwise, I would have had to make a new one. Honestly, I can't imagine changing that format. It's such an easy. I have a template with the logo, and I just swap out the poster that I use. It's the easiest format ever, so I don't think I will ever change it. The only difference is every 10th episode, I do, because it's 2 movies, I do the 2 movies on either side with the name on its side. With the exception of Barbenheimer, I just did a regular looking title card, except I had a Barbenheimer poster. I did make a separate one in case, because I made 2 different versions of that logo, because I did a Barbenheimer one, and I wasn't sure how well that was going to go. I knew a couple weeks beforehand that I was going to do that as the 40th episode. 30th episode. And so I went ahead and I did the poster that I used, called it Barbenheimer. And but I also made a regular 10th episode with the Oppenheimer and Barbie poster, and then called it Barbie/Oppenheimer, just in case the Barbenheimer thing was considered cringy by the time I did the episode. So I have 2 versions of that poster, and I've spent more time talking about the Barbenheimer episode than I've talked about the Chicken Run episode, which is the one I'm currently recording. So anyway, this one, I saw it when it came out, obviously, because I was a kid. This was one of the early DreamWorks animation films. DreamWorks animation, I feel, didn't really take off until Shrek. That's when they formed their, like, identity, to the point where that the Shrek theme is now the DreamWorks animation theme. But at the time that this was made, they were still trying to find their identity, because they had just started. They started out with, like, Ants and, like, Prince of Egypt and Road to El Dorado, and then this one. So they were just kind of, like, trying everything, which I think is smart for them, to just try a little bit of everything until they find out what works. Shrek clearly worked, and they're still doing it to this day. But this film started out as, it was made by Aardman, they're the ones who make Wallace and Gromit, they have a very distinct style. So that's why they look like that. Like with the mouth moving and the eyes and the comedy style, like that's why. It's the same people that make Wallace and Gromit. And the film actually, they started making it, I believe, in 2005. That in 1995 or 96. And because it's stop motion, what they actually they didn't use a computer to make this. They actually had to do like little mini figures, like one frame at a time. It takes a long time. You can't just crank one of these things out. So it took years. And DreamWorks didn't actually come in until close to the end because they were just trying to get their foot in the door just to try to do animation. So they were shopping around trying to find some, like Disney wanted in, 20th Century Fox wanted in, all these other companies wanted in, but DreamWorks was like, me, ooh, pick me. Speaking of DreamWorks, that's a Shrek reference. But yeah, I think I'm one of the few people who actually, I didn't particularly like this film. And even when my sister asked me to cover it, I was like, why that one? I was kind of glad I had already recorded my Thanksgiving episode because I didn't want to cover Chicken Run. But then, like, she seemed like really into it. So I was like, oh, okay, for you. Next year. Yeah, I was like, I threw it like so far into the future. I'm like, yeah, that'll never happen. And then, oh, look, time kept going and it's next year. So, yeah. So, like, I rewatched this movie recently. I will, disclosure, I didn't watch this before recording. I actually rewatched this a few months ago, and I made notes while I was watching then, because I knew I was going to do in this episode. And, yeah, so, like, I prepared for this episode a while back. So, I mean, technically, this is my most prepared for episode, but it also isn't. So, basically, the premise of it is there's these chickens on a farm, and the owner of the farm, her name is Mrs. Tweedy, not the bird, Tweedy, not Ty. She builds this machine to turn the chickens into pies, and they're trying to escape because for some reason they don't want to be turned into pies. There's even that famous line, I don't want to be turned. It's like, I don't want to be a pie, or whatever she said. I don't remember. I slept since then at least once. Then the leader of the chickens, her name is Ginger, played by Julia. I'm not going to try to pronounce that again. She was the leader, and she was trying to find a way to escape. And all the other chickens were like, there's no way to escape. We can't do it. And then Rocky Rhodes, voiced by Mel Gibson, shows up. She sees him flying. Chickens can't fly. And she sees him flying, and she's like, he can help us escape. And what he isn't revealing to them until later is that he actually can't fly. He's part of the chicken, and he was launched from a cannon. And this movie does that trope that I can't stand, and I know Nostalgia Critic talks about it a lot, but I hated it before I heard him talk about it. It's the liar revealed trope, where a character is lying to them this whole movie, and then there's the scene where they're found out, and then everyone's all mopey for a few scenes, and it's been done to death. And even at the time that this came out, it'd been done to death, and I hate it. And this movie does it like really bad. It's one of the worst ones, and it's not the worst, but it is one of the worst. And yeah, and it's voiced by Mel Gibson, which that's part of the reason I didn't want to cover this, because Mel Gibson is not exactly not problematic now. I think he was at the time. I didn't know much about him at the time. I was a little kid. I was just like, oh, Mel Gibson, I know that name. And then he did Passion of the Christ, and I'm like, oh yay, he did that movie, and then he did other things, that I won't get into here. I will discuss something though. Part of me was tempted to hold off reviewing this for another year because Netflix is releasing a sequel next month, in about a month. I think it's December 15th. It's called Chicken Run: Dawn of the Nugget, and when I heard about it, I was concerned. I was like, I don't know if I want to see this because there's a certain problematic actor that they would have to bring back. Especially since Rocky is in the trailer and you can see him. And I'm like, they brought him back. But then doing research for this episode, I realized not only did they recast Rocky with someone named Zachary Levi, they basically recast everybody except for Miss Tweety. Miranda Richardson is pretty much the only returning cast member, which actually caused some controversy because what they told Julia, the voice of Ginger, was that her voice sounds too old now, which that is ageist, I guess, because yeah, that's kind of messed up. It's been 20 years. Her voice is going to sound older. Well, 25 years now, because, like, when did they record those lines? They didn't record it right before release, so it had to have been, like, 25 years ago. Her voice is going to sound older. And I would imagine chickens age at a much rapid rate. Like, I don't know how long after the movie... Actually, I'm going to look on Wikipedia. How long after the event... Wait. Oh, it looks like it picks up immediately after the movie ends. So, like, Chicken Run ends and the sequel begins. I was going to say, just do a time jump. Like, chickens age at a much rapper rate than humans. You could say... Oh, it's been a couple years, so that's why she sounds older. Because she's an older chicken. But instead, they decided to replace everyone. Mel Gibson, I understand replacing, but, like, I don't know if they replaced everyone so they can be like, oh yeah, we only replaced him because we replaced everyone. I mean, you could say you replaced only with Mel Gibson, and I'm pretty sure everyone would understand why. There is no mystery. Like, why did you replace Mel Gibson? Like, the very problematic actor that almost made me not want to watch this movie. But, yeah, obviously, they succeed at the end, because otherwise there wouldn't be a sequel. They escape. Actually, the first time I ever noticed... you know what? This is a 23-year-old movie. I'm going to spoil it. This is the first movie I ever really noticed, like, the climactic ending, because somebody had explained to me, like, climactic films, to make it more climactic and dramatic, they have to, like, make it so that, it's... the stakes are raised and all that, and like basically how climax works in movies. And then the next movie I watched just happened to be this. And so, like, they put their plan in action, and then they have, like, the little wing cart thing on the way towards this ramp that's going to send them over the fence. And I'm like, all right, they're going to go over, the movie's going to end. But then, like, the ramp gets knocked over, and then they have to turn around and try again. And I'm like, oh, this is what they meant. So it's the first time I ever really noticed, like, the dramaticness of a climax. Which, you're probably going to be like, really? That's the first time you ever noticed? I was like 10, okay? Leave me alone. I don't know if I'm going to watch the sequel. But yeah, it's premiering on Netflix on December 15th. It has the same writer as your first one. So, Yeah, it looks like... Yeah, looking at the Wikipedia, it looks like the only returning people are the screenwriter Karey Kirkpatrick and Miranda Richardson. So, yeah. Which I guess kind of makes sense for Miranda Richardson's character, Mrs. Tweedy, because she was an older lady in the thing, in the movie, and so, like, they probably won't be like, your voice is too old, but, like, the character's old. So that's probably why they had her come back. But anyway, that's the Thanksgiving episode. Anyway, I'm gonna end the episode